Zelda Breath of the Wild's overworld is one of the few things I could say is close to or is perfection in video games, and is probably one of the reasons for its long development cycle. The amount of work it must have taken to create such a believable and polished overworld must have been immense. So to understand how video game's perfect overworld was created, I explored the actual perfect overworld. The most obvious part that makes exploration fun is just looking at it. The satisfaction of hiking up a tall hill or even mountain and getting a beautiful view at the climax, or just wandering through forested areas and looking up at the branching trees nesting over you. The gratification of this cannot be met in a video game, however, Breath of the Wild still does it incredibly well. Any mountain or even the opening cutscene that has you complete tasks and you are rewarded with these stunning views that even serve a mechanical purpose of giving an easy flight down, that cover a lot of distance after working so digitally hard to get to the top of the mountain. Going on a journey through nature is a lot more atmospheric than walking through some random town or city, and I think the designers of Breath of the Wild have understood that incredibly well, making the villages still very intact with nature, and the one that isn't, very grand and overly beautified. Even walking through areas with, well, quite dead trees, it still looked very nice, and while it may not look it on camera, was very rewarding for the eyes. The whole game looks like a painting with what I think is supposed to recreate a painting's layered methods, with back mountains having strong silhouettes and these silhouettes being weakened and replaced with more and more colour and detail. Such incredible artistic attention being displayed here, and it would be a crime not to acknowledge this. The visual peacefulness is only one half of the two main senses that are pleased in exploration: vision and hearing. The ambience of exploration is also an important factor of adding to the atmospheric sense of it. Walking through a forest and hearing the rustling of the trees or the birds chirping creates a divide between the city and its natural counterpart. While the city is overflowing with cars, people and other disturbances, the essence of nature is its peaceful and ambient sounds. The rumble of the cars versus the rush of the wind, the crowds gathering versus the isolation of the forest. Well, yes, there are people in Breath of the Wild, in areas that are more rural and less developed, which is most of the map. These are few and far between. So you aren't hearing crowds of people riling up ready to fight. It's just you, the sound of nature, and quiet, subtle piano notes. The sound of grass moving around your feet or the random small creature emerging from behind a tree produces this very busy but tranquil ecosystem. But still the isolation of nature feels incredibly present. This, coupled with one of the most powerful soundtracks in games that is criticised for not being the series' norm of energetic and upbeat. However, if it was like the old games, it would just feel out of place. This game's primary objective, in my opinion, was exploration, and I think they have noticed the same way that I have, that exploration works much better with ambient noises, hence the rise in energy when the focus switches to combat, or how the music gets a bit faster when you ride a horse, but as you're still exploring, still keeps its ambient nature. I think the audio here is just as important for the believability of Hyrule. The constant howling of the wind, or more grassy areas having cricket noises, and higher up mountains hearing the chirping of birds, all without it sounding robotic or irregular. Like, if you remove the music and just play the noises of the game, I believe it's just a recording of some random forest. Going back to the point of vision, when you combine these two aspects of the game's design, it just makes it feel so vast. There are definitely games with bigger maps, but none present the same scale that Breath of the Wild does. And I think it's due not only to the amount of content in the map, but the sheer freedom to go anywhere. If you can see something, you can usually get to it. This brings me to this game's freedom of interaction. You can just go around anywhere and everywhere and interact in a variety of different ways to solve different problems. Like, yes, I could go on this nice, safe, set out path for me, but I could also get mauled by a grizzly bear. Breath of the Wild took open world to a whole new level. You complete the tutorial and this is open world. If you wish to, after you have just finished the tutorial, you can run to the final boss and try to defeat him. If you somehow beat one of the enemies with only a tree branch and take their weapon, it's very possible for you to get to Ganon's castle and actually defeat him this way, if you're good enough anyway. The king points you to Kakariko village, but if you feel like it, you can go to Gerudo first or even Goron. The fact that you go on your path makes it feel like it's your journey through the game. Did I mention climbing as well? I played some of Elden Ring, and you can tell it's not as exploration focused, as in places I felt a bit limited trying to get to areas. Nothing bad about this, it's just a difference between the two. But in Zelda, you can literally just go anywhere you see because you can climb almost anything that's outside. Like, I could walk through the gates of the Colosseum thingy, but at the same time, I could glide in, make a cool entrance, hit the line a few times, then get smoked. The amount of different ways to get about a singular problem is amazing. I could fight some enemies or set the ground alight, creating an updraft and then glide over them. Or I need a place to sleep, so I cut down some trees, make a campfire and then rest till dawn. These emergent gameplay mechanics allow so much player expression because they aren't intended to be used in one way. They are designed with the idea that the player can use them however they think of, and it leads to so many cool clips and ideas players have. The game doesn't want you to do what the developer thinks you will do, and prepares for all circumstances by making everything free to explore and giving so many different ways to go about even the most minor of problems. Just as amazing is how it gets you interested in such minor things. Interest is a weird thing I noticed made my small journey fun. Just walking around and seeing a funny looking rock or a small stream of water in the distance, then going to it, looking at it and then just continuing. I don't know how to explain it, but finding these little small things scattered around the forest was actually quite fun. Zelda implements this in literally the exact same way, but adds interesting rewards or thrills. That rock looks slightly out of place, there's probably a Korok underneath it. The boulder over there looks a lot bigger than the rest, probably a talus. However, it also adds other things you can be interested in. You can be walking but see an enemy camp in the distance, then instead of just barging in, you can scan the surroundings and devise a strategy to take them out easily. I don't know what the random interest comes from, but it's just like when you see something out of place in a completely natural area, it just draws you to it. The game also rewards your exploration with fun tasks like side missions or shrines. The shrines are criticized quite a bit for not being like the traditional dungeons, but personally I think they're perfect. While exploring, you will see something, go to it and just move on. Same way with shrines, you explore, see the shrine, finish the puzzle and boom, you carry on with your journey. The shrines aren't quick shoving tasks either. They're a perfect difficulty where they get your brain thinking but not get you stuck. They creatively use the game's physics and mechanics to make these intricate and cruel puzzles that, if you have even more mastery of the game, you can skip past them, but that's besides my point. The game very much understands interest reward. The deep understanding of this just makes you more interested in random out of place things and makes you want to explore even more. If the player is getting rewarded with new and interesting fun tasks every time they go off path, then they're going to become more curious. And with the 120 unique puzzles, well besides combat shrines, it makes you curious as to what cool puzzle will be uncovered next. With that is also the theory of varying rewards. In the 1950s, a scientist did an experiment where two rats would pull a lever to get food. One rat got the same food every time, the other got random rewards. Sometimes it would receive its favourite thing, while other times it wouldn't even want what it gives you. The rat that had varying rewards responded far more, and we see this type of engagement technique in Breath of the Wild's exploration. Sometimes you will find something you really want, sometimes it's things you want to avoid, and sometimes it's the exact thing you need. So much genius was put into the game that it's actually just mind-blowing. Breath of the Wild has been the most impactful and memorable game I've completed in the last few years, so I do applaud it for that. This was the game that made me appreciate games less as an activity and more as an art form. But I think we should also step back from games sometimes. Like, instead of exploring so much in Breath of the Wild, go outside.